morning. Yesterday we heard some sophisticated talks about psychometrics and statistics, and I'm going to change the subject slightly over towards what we could call physiometrics, or as the subtitle of a previous book I wrote back in 1994, I think, I called it a sort of a physicology thing, because I was impressed by some previous inspirations. There was a man who 2,500 years ago said, everything flows pantare. And he said that reality is an illusion. And he said that you cannot bathe in the same river once, because the river will be different when you go up again, and you will be different too. Then I'm inspired by eminent physicist Ludwig Boltzmann. He read Darwin's Origin of Species, and he said, I think this man is up to mechanical heat theory, thermodynamics. Evolution is a thermodynamic phenomenon. Then Rasov Smills said recently, I think it is funny that we all know that energetics are guiding everything in this universe, including people, their behavior, and their civilization. But nobody has dared to try to unite the whole thing into one coherent theory. I have to stress that I will try to do that now, but I have no formal qualifications in physics, neither in thermodynamics. I am an interested and enthusiastic amateur. And I also have to submit now that I'm a few months from turning 90. So my brain is rotting at an astonishing rate. So I have to keep fairly close to my manuscript. I know it's boring to listen to, but I have to do that. So, we don't have an energetic theory about the evolution of intelligence and civilization. So I'll first present a new one, as described in a recent book that came out, Constraint-Shaped Minds, Societies and Civilizations. The problem with existing theories is that they remain strongly fragmented in disciplines. Physics studies energy systems, psychology studies cognition, sociology studies institutions, economics studies allocation, and artificial intelligence studies engineered cognition. However, there's no comprehensive framework integrating energy on the one side, intelligence, social coordination, migration, and long-term civilizational development within one adaptive systems architecture. So the central task is accordingly to construct a cross-domain coupling model. I have three major ambitions with this. First, to establish a theoretical framework, MESTR, as a systems model of civilization. The model attempts to integrate migrational history, energetic constraint, adaptive selection, and trait redistribution into one coherent explanatory structure. Second, I propose a methodological approach based on conceptual synthesis across disciplines. And this framework combines thermodynamics, systems theory, evolutionary biology, migration theory, intelligence research, anthropology, and macro-historical analysis. I gather that you already now realize that this is really ambitious. And third, I will provide a unified lens through which intelligence, evolution, and civilization can be interpreted together rather than separately. The broader argument is that civilization itself is an emergent thermodynamic system and coordination process. Institutions, technologies, and cognitive systems stabilizes energy flow and reduces coordination costs across large populations. I model civilization as an open, non-equilibrium thermodynamic system. Like all living systems, civilization maintains organization through continuous energy throughput. Civilizations survive by importing usable energy, by reducing entropy locally, and by stabilizing coordination across increasingly large scales. The framework, therefore, treats civilization as adaptive, as feedback-driven, and as dynamically evolving. Changes in climate, migration, technology, and institutions propagate throughout the system through feedback loops. The important theoretical point is that civilization is a non-static equilibrium, but dynamic adaptive stabilization under energetic constraint. I see MESTR as a dynamic state-space model. The dimensions are migration, energy, selection, technological adaptation, and redistribution of traits. These dimensions interact continuously through feedback processes. The system evolves over time through nonlinear interactions, threshold effects, path dependence, and emergent dynamics. The key idea is that intelligence, or intelligence, as I would like to redefine it, emerges not from isolated components, but from coupling dynamics among multiple interacting systems. Migration and resource exchanges are treated as energetic flow networks. These include flows of populations, matter, goods, information, and institutional practices. The framework generalizes migration beyond simple demographic movement. Migration reorganizes energetic environments and selection pressures. Flow systems always face trade-offs between efficiency, redundancy, robustness, and adaptability. Highly optimized systems may become fragile. More redundant systems may sacrifice efficiency for resilience. This logic applies both biologically and institutionally. Energy sets the upper limit for achievable complexity. No civilization can maintain organizational complexity beyond its energetic support capacity. The framework draws analogies between biological metabolism, infrastructural scaling, and civilizational energy throughput. Entropy reduction always requires energy expenditure. As systems scales upwards, coordination costs rise, infrastructure requirements increase, and buffering demands expand. The Environmental Hardness Index operationalizes this constraint structure by estimating ecological maintenance burdens across ecozones. Large-scale cooperation requires increasingly sophisticated coordination mechanisms. Social coordination depends on communication, trust, shared symbolic systems, norms, and institutional synchronization. Collective influence emerges when distributed agents successfully coordinate information processing. Language, religion, law, education, and digital communication systems all function as coordination technologies. I propose that civilizations with lower coordination costs achieve greater long-term adaptive stability. Technology externalizes cognition. Tools, writings, machines, and artificial intelligence progressively moves information processing outside individual biological organisms. Technology also compresses adaptation time. Agriculture thus required millennia to spread. Industrialization required centuries. Digital systems transform civilization within decades. As technological acceleration increases, feedback cycle shortens, complexity increases, and adaptive instability may arise. Artificial intelligence represents the newest stage of externalized cognition and distributed intelligence. Regulatory systems stabilize complexity on the scale. As societies expand, coordination cannot depend solely on informal norms. Regulation evolves from tribal customs to legal systems to bureaucratic administration and increasingly to algorithmic governance. These systems function as control architectures. Their role is to reduce instability, maintain predictability, coordinate allocation, and prevent systemic collapse. The larger and more complex the civilization becomes, the more important regulation becomes for energetic stabilization. This is the conceptual core. The MESTR variables are mutually interdependent. Migration affects gene frequencies, energetic distribution, institutional load, and selection pressure. Technology alters coordination cost, buffering capacity, and environmental exposure. These interactions are non-linear. Small changes may produce cascading instability, phase transitions, or rapid adaptation. The framework therefore emphasizes emergence, path dependence, thresholds, and systemic feedback. Civilizational history is interpreted as dynamic, adaptive evolution rather than linear progress. Human civilization evolves through major phase transitions: biological, cultural, industrial, informational, and technological. Each transformation increases energy utilization, information density, and coordination scale. These transitions represent expansions in civilization's capacity to process information and stabilize larger energetic systems. The emergence of language, writing, states, markets, science, and AI can all be interpreted as step changes in coordination complexity. Intelligence is not localized. It is not confined solely to brains, institutions, or machines. Instead, intelligence emerges from coordinated adaptive systems capable of processing information, allocating energy, and responding to environmental complexity. The long-term trend is toward externalization, hybridization, and distributed cognition. Modern civilization increasingly function as a hybrid human-machine informational ecology. So I have proposed MESTR as a candidate unifying framework for civilization studies. The framework attempts to integrate migration history, energetic constraints, intelligence, institutions, and technological evolution within one adaptive systems model. Future work should include formal mathematical modeling, agent-based simulation, and empirical validation, as well as comparative civilizational analysis. My broader ambition is to develop a general theory of adaptive complexity grounded in thermodynamics and systems evolution. But for now, let me finish with a few empirical examples of my recent book on how thermodynamic constraints shape our minds, societies, and civilization. This deck presents the data collection line while focusing on how environmental south to north migratory harshness is related to genetic, morphological, cognitive, life history, and social reorganization across the Afro-European sample I used. I used Spearman's rainwater correlation, Krustal-Wallis power estimates, and Kendall's tau on data for 78 Afro-European countries to test whether the EHI structures genetic and other population differences. In part 1 of the study, EHI is treated as continuous. In part 2, bins of the same environmental harshness gradient into 5 ecozones. This matters because convergence across continuous correlations and ecozone tests strengthens the interpretation that a coherent macroecological gradient is being captured in the study. It's important to note that EHI is an independent environmental predictor, not an outcome, and that all components are transformed so that higher values means harsher environmental constraint. This avoids circularity because IQ, institutions, and morphology are not used to construct the EHI. EHI is exogenous to IQ and social outcome. Low irradiance actually means reduced usable social input. Low primary production means lower ecological productivity. Cold minima means higher thermoregulatory loads, thermal seasonality, greater annual variation, and photoperiodic variability compresses planning and storage windows. So more seasonal, colder, darker, lower productivity environments impose higher survival and coordination costs. From table 3 in the book, we see that the strongest positive associations are with latitude, but genetic distance, morphology, and life history measures follow the same direction. The weak longitudinal association is important because it suggests the signal is primarily a south to north harshness gradient rather than a generic geography effect. Note that I'm not talking about latitude because latitude correlates about 0.99 with the EIH index, but they are defined completely different. One is a geographical measure, the other one is how much energy is available where you live. Table 4 suggests that the main empirical point is not a single IQ correlation, but convergence across several cognitive metrics. National IQs plus SAS IQ, TIMSS IQ, PILS IQ, and PISA IQ. The sample sizes differ, but all associations are large and positive and support robustness. Here you see the positive societal indicators from table 5. Institutional altruism, scientific output, income, education, HDI, achievement, and GNI per capita all show large positive rank associations with EU, as you would expect also from cold winter theory. This is the mirror image of social development in relation to EHI. The negative signs reflect scale orientation. As EHI increases, indicators coded as worst risk or instability tend to decrease or reverse. Not all scales have identical semantics, so we better be careful about interpretation here. But the overall pattern is clear. Low ecological constraint allows for less social order and higher life history developmental risks. This slide provides the bridge from continuous correlations to ecozone aggregation. ISX is not IQ. It is an externalized system score constructed from development, education, science, institutional stability, democracy, institutional altruism, and economic organization. The visible gradient supports the ecological prediction but remains correlational. And ecozone means summarize country level scores, not individual level variation. The main message from table 15 is that ecozone membership is associated with large ordered differences in income, HDI, democracy rank, scientific output, and fragile state rank. Remember that the tests are non-parametrical, reducing dependency on normalcy assumptions, and the e to the second power test gives the between ecozone effect size estimates, and they are all very large, meaning that if your family has been living for millennia in a certain ecozone with a certain level of available energy, you are identifiable today by the DNA signal from prehistoric time. This is what is called deep root ideas. Let me close with a synthesis. The figure actually shows convergent empirical patterns. And we have the genetic differentiation. We have across the ecozone analysis a high population level, ecological correlation, and non-deterministic relations. The evidence is broad and converged across domains, and the conclusion can be framed as macro-structural pattern consistent with the EHI MESTR framework. Moreover, the analyses are country-level, ecozone-level, correlational, and do not determine individual outcome. The evidence is consistent with MESTR, but does not provide definitive causal truth. However, further research will determine whether the empirical ecozone-ecotype classification will eventually substitute the traditional subjective and controversial race classification. Thank you very much.